people talk about vouchers as this big umbrella topic and fail to realize that the detail in which that is implemented, if it is in fact implemented, will have a tremendous amount of impact on how UIL is required to respond to it. There's a number of different voucher systems, from the full-on education savings account that just give parents of school-age kids a $6,000, $8,000, $9,000, whatever number dollar check. Mm-hmm. The ledge decides, and they can do whatever they want with it. And then the question is, would that legislation speak into UIL eligibility? Sometimes that type of legislation does. Sometimes it's completely silent on it.
My next guest is somebody who's making a big impact on the lives of millions of Texas high school kids, parents, coaches, you name it. We're going to dig deep into some of the issues that they're facing. I will introduce you to Dr. Jamey Harrison right after this.
Hi, listeners. This is Glenn West, the Assistant Executive Director of Texas High School Coaches Association. It's time to register for coaching school. This year's coaching school will be held in San Antonio, July 21st through the 23rd. And in addition to the 250 lecture hours that we offer, we'll be adding a second turf field that will allow soccer, baseball, and softball demos. Tennis, aquatic, and golf will be off-site for one day of exhibits as well. Basketball court will be moved from a half court to a full court. You're all not going to want to miss this. You can find information of coaching school and hotels and membership renewal on our website at thsca.com.
Have you ever thought about doing your own podcast? It is the absolute best way to grow your brand, spread your message, and build your following. Fresh Media Works can help. We do all the heavy lifting, and you just focus on your message. To find out how easy we can make launching your new podcast, call 713-269-4620 or check us out at freshmediaworks.com. All right, everybody, join me in welcoming Dr. Jamey Harrison, Deputy Director of the UIL, to the show. Dr. Harrison, how are you today?
Doing great. Really appreciate you having me.
Of course. So I've got so many questions, but I like to back up. You grew up and you played ball at Hardin-Jefferson, right?
I did.
And tell me about it. It wasn't just, you're just kind of a average athlete that never did anything. You actually had some state experience.
I did. I had the good fortune of playing on a state championship team in 1991, and actually, had in my 2 years as the starting point guard, our team was 72-3. So nice. A lot of success that was a lot of fun.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny because when we get on these shows, being in Texas, when you talk state champions, people immediately think, oh, football. But no, it was round ball. You were a basketball power, Hardin-Jefferson.
Yes, sir. We were we were a program that enjoyed a lot of success for sure.
Nice. And I was reading that you, in addition to sports, you were involved in other things, so you kind of got a well-rounded experience as a kid, right?
I did. I also had the opportunity to march in the state marching band contest. I was a drummer, which is important to know that that's very different than a percussionist. A percussionist is much more talented than what I was. I was a drummer. And also competed in some UIL academic competitions, number sense specifically, which I don't even think exists anymore,
right.
Which shows my age. But, yeah, I had the opportunity to be a part of a lot of different UIL activities.
I love that. And so early on, you kind of knew education was going to be in your future?
I did. Our coaches and my head coach, of course, was Dr. Brydup. Had such an impact on me that I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I actually started coaching even before I got out of college, and started my career off as a coach and just really treasure the memories I have from my coaching experience.
And how long did that last? Because you also went on to do a lot with administration.
I did. I coached for 6 years, 4 of those as a head basketball coach, and then started my adventure in administration. I was a high school assistant principal, which is the hardest job in public education. For 2 years, I was a high school principal for 2 years. I was a deputy superintendent for 2 years, and then served as a school superintendent for 4 before I joined UIL.
Nice. I love that phrase, adventure in administration. That's nothing I've heard before, but talk about that, how it's actually a different beast altogether.
Well, for people who have not done it, it certainly seems that way. But and honestly, when I got into administration, I intended to do it for exactly 1 year and then get back into coaching. But what I found was there's a lot more parallels in coaching and school administration, honestly, and coaching and any type of leadership. I mean, as a coach, you're part of an organization, you're leading an organization, you're solving problems, you're managing staff, you're managing players, you're juggling schedules, you're making corrections on the fly as you get more data in, game to game, you're game planning. All of that is the same thing that the CEO of major companies does. Right. They do the exact same thing. So there's really a lot of parallels between the two.
Definitely. And talk about the jump to the UIL. What prompted that, and how did you end up there?
Well, I served on the UIL Legislative Council when I was a superintendent at Bridge City ISD. And that's after that is when the opportunity came to me to join UIL. Dr. Rudup had been the executive director for a little more than a year and had time to identify some voids in the management and leadership structure here at UIL, and wanted to fill those with somebody fresh from the field. So I had the opportunity to join in 2011 and have been here since.
Nice. And what about that position has, I guess, surprised you the most?
How much it changes. I mean, honestly, the position I hold today and the job that I do today is remarkably different than the job I took, even though my title hasn't changed. Yeah. It's just the nature of the world we're in right now. Change is inevitable. It is happening at a much faster pace than most of us even would like to see, but it's happening nonetheless. And so just the constant change and managing that is probably the biggest surprise.
Definitely. And, the UIL seems to have grown much closer with the Coaches Association. In the 20 years I've been doing this, I've noticed a growth together. And what have you seen as far as those relationships? Well,
one, I think you've seen that relationship improved because of a lot of effort on both sides. Starting with Coach Rutledge and his leadership, and he really wanted to bridge what many perceived as a gap that was just too wide between the two organizations. And then Coach Martin has taken that baton and continued that growth. And then conversely, on the UIL side, I think you've seen a real effort from UIL staff to improve that relationship, to strengthen it. Our communications are so much more frequent. I mean, when I first started here in 2011, we certainly visited with the Coaches Association and their leadership, maybe 4, 5, 6 times a year. Now it's in a slow time, it's 3 or 4 times a month. Yeah. And then sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 times a week, depending on what's going on at the time. So the frequency of communication, the collegiality of that communication has drastically improved, and I think it's because both organizations have really focused on it.
Yeah, and talk about some of the, challenges that both organizations have noticed that have kind of forced you to, look, we got to get together on this stuff.
Well, external forces. There was a time where UIL business happened in a little bit of a bubble, not completely, but largely, and it was only with school people. Now with the changes in the way people get their news, the speed with which people get their news, the level of engagement that people have from the public, the high-profile nature of our activities, quite frankly, the proliferation of youth sports and travel sports and non-school sports has changed the emphasis in many cases on athletics, and that has caused a lot of external, people who aren't coaches or athletic directors or school administrators to engage much more in UIL processes. And that's one thing that we talk about a lot. UIL as an organization serves a lot of different constituency groups. I mean, obviously we work remarkably closely with coaches. We also work with athletic directors and school superintendents, and always have. But we also have to work with parents and with kids and with elected officials, and their willingness to engage and really push for change has increased dramatically over the last couple of decades. So, I would point to that as an area that we have to continue to focus on.
Yeah, let's go into some of those challenges. The things like vouchers, NIL. What's the big one right now? The 500, 600-pound gorilla in the room.
Honestly, the 500-pound gorilla in the room is the unknown. Surrounding topics like those you just mentioned, right? The NIL world in college athletics has changed the game dramatically, and we have seen in other states it start to change the game in high school athletics as well. So far in Texas it hasn't, but you don't know. You're one legislative session away from that changing. School vouchers and people talk about vouchers as this big umbrella topic and fail to realize that the detail in which that is implemented, if it is in fact implemented, will have a tremendous amount of impact on how UIL is required to respond to it. There's a number of different voucher systems, from the full-on education savings account that just give parents of school-age kids a $6,000, $8,000, $9,000, whatever number dollar check. The ledge decides, and they can do whatever they want with it. And then the question is, would that legislation speak into UIL eligibility? Sometimes that type of legislation does. Sometimes it's completely silent on it. On down to very restricted voucher programs that include students who are served by special education services, for example, or only for certain subsets. We recently had a legislative change that allowed a little more school choice for peace officers and military parents, for example. So the details of any kind of plan that, if enacted, includes will absolutely impact how we have to respond. So all of those things might be coming, they might not, and how they come will matter, and what they come with will matter. And that's why I say the unknown is really the 600-pound gorilla, because we don't know what's coming and in exactly what form. Yeah.
And statements that the UIL has made in the last year or two around some of these issues have been, look, this is happening in some other states right now. This gives us an opportunity to learn from them and pay attention to what's happening. What have you seen from other states that is either good or bad?
Well, we're still learning that. So it's difficult to point to. What we do know is in other states, NIL has led to students changing schools.
Yes.
Right. And how that works, what eligibility rules, or even power to make eligibility rules that we might have, will be remarkably important. When the NIL discussion first started, really in the early stages of it, Louisiana was one of the first states to allow high school students to sign NIL deals.
Yeah.
And we had coaches on the eastern part of the state, closer to Louisiana, that were very concerned they were going to lose kids to Louisiana.
Right.
And so we started asking the question, okay, so would this be a good solution? If we then allow it in Texas, you won't lose them to Louisiana, but if you're afraid you're going to lose them to Louisiana, could you lose them to the Houston area or the DFW area or the San Antonio area for the same reason, right? Because they have more businesses, they have more people, they have more wealth in aggregate to offer students. So, I mean, we're just changing where they're changing schools too. We're going from your school in East Texas to a school in Louisiana to a school in East Texas to a school in the Texas Metroplex. Is that really the solution? And so far the answer has been now that we think it through, that's really not the solution. So, right. Fortunately, we actually still have a state law that prohibits it. Whether that changes and how it changes, we will see.
Yeah, well, even you mentioned Louisiana. Even before they had NIL, they've had rules that have allowed kids basically to go where they want to. And you see teams there that have won 25 state championships, So it becomes the haves and the have-nots. So I guess talk about how important it is that we keep what we have in our public school systems, our public athletics, our competitions, to keep everybody involved. From the standpoint of simple event attendance to killing a town if they have nothing.
Well, you hit on a lot of things there, and let me try to sort through them. So one, as a school person, I can tell you, you take the school out of a town and the town dries up and goes away. I mean, we've seen that through ISD consolidations. If a small town in that larger consolidated ISD can at least keep an elementary school, at least, then the town survives. If they lose all of their schools, the town just doesn't survive. It just doesn't. And UIL activities are such, they're so ingrained in the fabric of our communities that if they lose those in any meaningful way, even if they don't lose a team altogether, but they essentially lose their team because students are choosing to go other places, then that will have a real negative impact on Texas communities. I know that what really makes Texas stand out is the fact that the whole town does show up. Right. And the whole town shows up because they know those kids. They know those kids' parents. They go to church with them. They see them at the grocery store. They know their uncles. They know multiple generations of that kid's family in most cases. They're very community-based. What we've seen in other states that have gone away from community-based teams and more of a, hired assassin kind of a model, all-star team kind of a model, is the towns don't care as much anymore. I mean, in Florida, we've talked to coaches there since they had state legislation that, as you said, allows kids to just go to school anywhere they want and be eligible. And the reports we're getting for them is that they literally have kids that will play football at one school, basketball another, and run track at a third. And college coaches have told us sometimes it's difficult to recruit the kids because we don't know what school they're at now. We know where they played football, but they're not playing basketball there, so we can't find them. And then you look at their state championships. I mean, Florida has great football, right? I mean, they have a great recruiting base, a lot of talent in that state, really good high school football. And you watch their state championships, and there's just hardly anybody in the bleachers. Yeah. And you watch ours, and you got 45,000, 50,000 people at one game. It's very different in Texas, and it's because of the community-based nature of our athletics, and that's what we're fighting hard to keep.
Right on. And talk about the UIL's position or relationship with travel sports and club sports, because that's kind of a gun for hire junior kind of level.
Well, we don't have much of a relationship with those groups. They're very different groups that, while they have many of the same kids competing in their competitions, it's not all the same people. It's not the same coaches. Right. There's no real structure to it. And so it's just very different. I think what all of us recognize is that the non-school culture is starting to infiltrate school athletics. We're seeing it from student behavior on the court or the field to fan behavior in the stands. And what is acceptable, or at least they define as acceptable in non-school sports, may well not be acceptable when it comes to community-based school sports. And so, the whole culture Again, I'll keep using that word, whether it be behavior during the competitions or I don't like my role on this team, so I'm just going to write a check to a different team or find a different team that wants me, that will use me differently. All of those things are really starting to infiltrate, high school sports. And, you asked me earlier why the two organizations are working so well together. And I mentioned it's because of a lot of effort, but it's also because of necessity, right? Mm-hmm. Saving these sports, keeping what we have that is so special and that is so different than anywhere else in the country is really important. And it's going to take both organizations working really hard together to keep what we have.
Definitely. And that's one of the things we hope to do here is help spread that story. But let me ask you this. So for people listening, whether it's coaches, parents, administrators, whoever, what advice can you give them or direction of things they can do to help save community-based sports?
Well, I think they engage in the process, and whatever that process is, right, whether it be UIL processes or even legislative processes. I mean, letting their legislators know how they feel and why these activities are important and why elements of our rules help protect that are important to them as voters, I think is really important. You can get it's always amazing to me how one very specific one-off situation at one school with one kid and one set of parents can lead to a statewide change because those parents have the right connections, get to the right legislator, and that legislator takes that cause on. And it's a problem that really could be solved with a scalpel, but oftentimes a sledgehammer is applied to it. So I think that's the best way. Parents in particular can just to be aware that these rules exist for a reason. We don't draw them up in the dirt. The rules we have are the evolution of more than a century of being in existence and knowing what works and knowing what doesn't and being malleable and tweaking those rules to keep up with the changing educational landscape while at the same time protecting the community-based nature of what we do. Right. And
this may be a bit repetitive, but make the case for people who don't coach, who don't have kids in the school district, but maybe are business owners, community leaders, the importance of salvaging our system to them, why it's important to them.
Well, from a business perspective, I think our activities, depending on the type of business you have a tremendous impact on local businesses, whether it be attracting families so that you have an improved workforce from which to choose, or actual economic impact in terms of people coming in for a game and attending your restaurant or staying in your hotel or, buying gas at your gas station. I think all of that is remarkably important and is remarkably Texan, quite frankly. Again, we're just different. Other states have great activities, and we love the people in those states. They're just not the same. And so to protect a huge part of what makes Texas, Texas, I think will really take a community effort. It's gonna take coaches and UIL working together, but it's also going to take parents and business owners, as you mentioned, people who are no longer individually engaged in our activities because they have a kid or a grandkid competing, but because as a business owner in a community, doing what is best for that community is also doing what is best for your business.
Right on. And you mentioned earlier that I guess the thing you can count on the most is change. But talk about where do you see the future of the UIL going?
Right now, the areas that we're working on the most and are very complicated are both competitive equity, specifically in postseason structures, trying to improve competitive equity in the postseason, and the complexity that can come in the variety of solutions that we could choose from to attack that problem. And then the second is alignment. Alignment is always a topic at UIL. And there are so many different ways to do it. And again, the changing landscape of education, whether it be ISD schools of choice or charter schools, smaller schools drawing from much larger populations, how NIL and not NIL specifically, but that general conversation about kids wanting to be able to go to the best team or form up all-star teams from the time they're young and take them to a school. How can we take all of those topics and put them in the rule-o-matic machine that we don't have, that I wish we did, and see what comes out the other end? How can we tie those things together differently than we ever have? Alignment's always been based on enrollment. Now I think there are more factors that need to be included in that to really get alignment right in terms of competitive equity. And so I think the future of UIL right now, the most immediate future, is trying to include all of those elements, schools that are shrinking in enrollment but still come from very, very large population centers who are drawing students from areas much bigger than their own attendance zone. How can we put all of that together where we protect competitive equity without, trying to solve a problem for one or two or three schools, and then bringing in 300 schools in a negative way, right? Again, scalpel versus sledgehammer. So there's a lot of complexity to those conversations that will continue to be our focus of conversation for the immediate future.
Excellent. And now that Elon Musk is a Texan, I guess his next task should be invent that rule-o-matic machine.
It would be helpful to us, I can tell you.
Excellent. Dr. Jamey Harrison, gosh, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and sharing a very important bunch of topics.
Thank you for having some time with me.
The interviews in this show are brought to you by the Texas High School Coaches Association. THSCA provides to its more than 26,000 members access to the people, events, tools, and resources to help them thrive in the profession, become trusted leaders in their communities, and live balanced and successful lives. The work and sacrifice coaches do every day is vital to the development and success of student athletes. The THSCA supports these efforts. We fight for every coach, provide them with the connections and resources to improve their lives, and help all student athletes throughout the state enjoy lasting success. The mission statement is simply this: to help and serve Texas high school coaches as they work to help and serve student athletes. Helping coaches help kids. For more information on the THSCA, visit www.thsca.com. Hey, of course, I want to thank our guest, but I also want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving me what I consider the most valuable thing you can give, your time and your attention. And I know you don't do it to hear me. You hear it for the great messages provided by the THSCA. And hey, if you'd like to associate your company with the THSCA and the Coach's Call podcast, limited sponsorship opportunities are available. You can reach out to me, Chris Daly, 713-269-4620, or head over to my website, freshmediaworks.com. Once again, thank you so much for supporting Texas high school coaches. Please share this show out to everybody you can so that we can help share these important messages. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time on The Coach's Call.